Wrestling is usually a source of great pride for India at the Olympics. We've seen some illustrious names bring back medals for India, from Sushil Kumar to Yogeshwar Dutt to Sakshi Malik, Ravi Dahiya, Bajrang Punia, and now Aman Sehrawat. Vinesh Phogat could have been a name on this list with a historic silver or, for all you know, just a gold, but she didn't even get a chance to bid for those top two medals after being disqualified on the morning of her gold medal bout because she failed to make weight in her category. Now, that particular result has triggered an appeal from Vinesh and her team to the Court of Arbitration for Sport, which has an ad hoc tribunal in Paris to listen to cases like this from wrestling and several other sports to basically try and address athlete grievances. Now, this ad hoc committee has basically heard her plea, and they are going to be making an interim order that is expected to come out anytime soon. Before that comes out, if you still are a little fudgy on the details of this Vinesh Phogat versus United World Wrestling, which is the world body for wrestling, and what exactly the point of contention is as far as her disqualification in the Paris Olympics is concerned, this video is for you. Let's start with what happened. Now, to understand the weigh-in process and how Vinesh was disqualified, you need to understand what a weigh-in is essentially. In wrestling, to ensure that the parity between body types or the parity between the strength of athletes is more or less equal, there are weight categories. So in the women's bracket, for example, you have 50 kgs, 53 kgs, 57 kgs. So there are certain brackets like this across the men's and the women's aisle. Vinesh in this Olympics was participating in the 50 kg category. Now, if you look at the world body wrestling rules, the mandate is that you have to make weight on 2 days of competitions. Now, that's because from 2018 onwards, wrestling became a 2-day event rather than a single-day affair that it was up until that point. One of the many reasons to switch to a 2-day format was to curb doping or athletes trying to gain an unfair advantage over their rivals by having to just weigh in once. So the second weigh-in would basically allow authorities to check for any unnecessary or unfair excessive weight which might give that competitor advantage over their rival. This 2-day weigh-in basically means that the athlete first has to register that category's weight on the first day, that is before the preliminary rounds, and then on the second day when the repechage and the medal rounds are held. This is to ensure that the competition remains even throughout the tournament. There is a little bit of an asterisk here. In international competitions, athletes are allowed a leeway of 2 kilos, which basically means the World Wrestling Body allows a tolerance or a grace of 2 kgs. So for example, if you have an athlete competing in the 50 kg category, they're allowed to go up to 2 kgs above that limit because, bodies are natural and you do understand that it is difficult to be exact with weight. So that permutation is there. But in the Olympics, this weight category is a hard weight category. So if you're saying there's an athlete in the 50 kg category, that athlete has to weigh 50 kgs or less, not an ounce or a gram more. In Vinesh's case, she weighed 100 grams more, and all her efforts to bring that weight down just did not work out. The weigh-in process itself is pretty rigid but very straightforward. Over 2 days, you have 2 weigh-ins. On the first day, the window for that weigh-in is 30 minutes. And that 30 minutes is a hard 30 minutes. There's no question of, in case you're up by a couple of grams, you go and tell the person, oh, can you just give me half an hour? I'll just sweat it out and come back and weigh myself again. No, you have to do whatever you do within that 30-minute period that is given for athletes to come and weigh themselves. The one good thing is wrestlers are allowed to weigh themselves as many times as they want until they get to the limit, the permitted limit of weight for that category. So I can step on that scale if I'm a wrestler. I can step on that scale 50 times if I want to in 30 minutes. As long as my 50th try is 50 kilos, if I'm participating in that category, I'm fine. I am permitted to step on that scale as many times as I want. In Vinesh's case, that's exactly what happened as well. She kept trying. She spent the entire night skipping, sweating in the sauna, basically trying to bring that weight down. She went with multiple tries, but within that period, she wasn't able to get through. So on day 1, it's a 30-minute window. On day 2, here's where things get a little more tricky. It's a 15-minute window. That's all the time athletes have to basically make weight. In Vinesh's case, she tried her best to bring her weight down in that particular period, but she couldn't. The Indian authorities tried and asked for more time, but a rule is a rule. No other athlete has the leeway of coming back a little later to register that time or to register that weight. And so Vinesh was not permitted that either. Now, to really understand what went into the weight cut for Vinesh, I'm going to play you a small clip from Dr. Dinshaw Pardiwala. He is a very renowned orthopedic surgeon who's currently with the Indian contingent in Paris as the chief medical officer of the team. There are a lot of people who are asking why an orthopedic surgeon is a chief medical officer. I don't want to fact check this, but he is a doctor at the end of the day. You don't get to be a surgeon if you aren't a doctor. And several athletes, including most recently Rishabh Pant, Neeraj Chopra, whose elbow was handled by Dinshaw Pardiwala, Vinesh, whose ACL surgery was handled by him. He's actually been there for a lot of these athletes through potentially career-threatening injuries. And it's understandable that he's with the team in that capacity, basically because most of the injuries that they could sustain could be serious ones as well. So it would be handy to have him on board. Anyway, that was a digression. Here's what Dr. Dinshaw Pardiwala had to say about Vinesh's weight cut and what the team went through the night before the weigh-in.
Wrestlers usually participate in a weight category less than their natural weight. It gives them an advantage since they are fighting with less stronger opponents. The process of weight cut prior to the weight in the morning involves a calculated restriction of food and water, and besides this the athlete needs to sweat, and that sweating is done with sauna and with exercise. Now this weight cut has the benefit of putting you into a lighter weight category but does cause weakness and energy depletion. And this is counterproductive to participation. So, most wrestlers will thereafter go in for some amount of energy restoration with limited water and high energy foods. And these are usually given after the weigh-in. The calculation from the nutritionist which is done is athlete specific. And Vinesh's nutritionist felt that the usual amount that she takes is about 1.5 kilograms totally over the day, which gives enough energy for the bouts. Sometimes there's also a factor of a rebound weight gain following competition. Now Vinesh had 3 bouts, and hence to prevent any dehydration, some amount of water had to be given. We found that her post-participation weight was increased more than normal, and the coach initiated the normal process of weight cut that he has always employed with Vinesh. This is something that's worked with her for a long period of time. He felt confident that this would be achieved, and over the night we went ahead with the weight cut procedure. However, in the morning we found that despite all of our efforts, her weight was 100 grams over her 50 kilogram weight category, and hence she was disqualified. We had tried all possible drastic measures throughout the night, including cutting off her hair, shortening her clothes, and despite all of this, we could not make that 50 kg weight category. Following disqualification as a precautionary measure, Vinesh was administered some intravenous fluids just to prevent dehydration, and typically we get a few blood tests done just to make sure that everything is normal. So this process is going on at the local Olympic hospital here. All of Vinesh's parameters during this weight cut were normal, and throughout this process she actually felt perfectly normal. Vinesh just interacted with IOA President Dr. Mrs. P.T. Usha and mentioned that although she is physically and medically perfectly normal, she's disappointed that this is her 3rd Olympics and she had to be disqualified.
So we've been hearing this line, a rule is a rule, several times over the last couple of days. So what exactly is the rule that Vinesh is bound by, and what is the rule that got her disqualified from that gold medal bout? According to Article 11 of the United World Wrestling's rulebook, an athlete who fails to make the weight cut will be eliminated from the event. If that athlete does not attend or fails the weigh-in on the first or the second weigh-in, he or she will be eliminated from the competition and ranked last. This means all the results that they have amassed so far will be null and void. Has this ever happened before? Now, weigh-in misses are a very common thing in wrestling. This is across amateur, Olympic level wrestling, or even pro wrestling, where we stuff like UFC and the other lot. So missing weigh-ins is very, very common. But what is not common is this happening to a finalist ahead of their gold medal bout during the weigh-in on the second day. So in all essences, this is going to be a very seminal case for wrestling as a whole, for Vinesh, for the Olympics as well, because whatever happens here will become the precedent for other athletes later on in the future to then refer and get their cases heard as well by CAS. Now let's get down to the appeal itself. On what grounds is Vinesh appealing to CAS? Now we know that she's asking for a joint silver medal, but here are the grounds on which she's actually making this demand. In the document submitted to CAS, Vinesh's team is appealing on grounds of prioritizing her health and argues that her weight gain was not done to acquire an advantage in the medal bout. The appeal says, and I quote, "The imperative of preserving athletes' health, which is an integral part of Lex Sportiva, must take precedence over all other considerations. The excess of 100 grams is extremely negligible, representing around 0.1% to 0.2% of the athlete's weight, and can easily be caused by the bloating of a human body during summer weight, as the heat makes the human body retain more water. It can also be due to muscle mass increase as the athlete has competed 3 times on the same day. It could also be caused by food consumption of the athlete after the competitions to sustain her health and integrity for the demanding competitions that lay ahead." What this appeal makes very, very clear is that Vinesh's excessive weight gain that was registered was not done to gain an unfair advantage over her opponents, but it is a natural part of an athlete's recovery process, and that she has every right to allow her body that recovery for her to actually have the ability to continue to compete in the competition. Vinesh's team is pleading to consider the hard work that's gone into qualifying for the gold medal bout, which included this incredible takedown of Yui Sasaki as well, which at the moment stands null and void. So now, who is making these appeals? Is it Vinesh herself who's going and speaking to CAS, or does she have a bunch of lawyers with her? Here's a look at the legal counsel that's involved in this case. Vinesh's legal team has French lawyers Joël Monlouis, Estelle Ivanova, Habine Estelle Kim, and Charles Amson, who helped her in the IOA during the filing of the application. These lawyers have been provided to her by the Paris Bar, and this is a pool of lawyers who have been made available by the organizers of the Olympics to represent any athlete who might want to take an appeal to CAS. In addition to this, the IOA got involved and got 2 star lawyers from India also involved in this case, one of them being veteran lawyer Harish Salve. Salve has served as the Solicitor General of India from 1999 to 2003, and he's also represented India before the International Court of Justice in the Kulbhushan Jadhav case. In addition to him, there's also Vidushpat Singhania, who is a sports law expert who's also been called on to assist in this case. The person who will be listening to this, that is the arbitrator, is Dr. Annabel Bennett, who is a former judge in the Federal Court of Australia. There has already been a hearing in this case on August 9th, where Vinesh was present virtually. Harish Salve and Vidushpat Singhania were also tuned in virtually, where Salve is supposed to have spoken for over an hour detailing Vinesh's side of the case, and the French lawyers who are on this case on a pro bono basis have made the arguments on the wrestler's behalf. So naturally, if the CAS verdict comes in favor of Vinesh, it's going to have some very large implications for the world of wrestling itself. This is something that IOC President Thomas Bach and the UWW Chief Nenad Lalovich have both spoken about over the last couple of days. Both of them have been very clear to give their sympathies to Vinesh, but have also been very, very straightforward about the fact that if an allowance is made for an athlete today, what is the guarantee that someone else will not come and try to get that leniency put across a little further? If today a 100-gram leniency has been allowed, what stops another athlete from coming and saying, if you allowed 100 grams, why can't you allow 200? Or if you allowed 101, why can't you allow 190? What both these gentlemen are talking about is, where does the buck stop? In Lalovich's case, he speaks about the fact that clear-cut weight categories are existing for a reason, and what UWW wants to ensure is that wrestlers participate in categories that are as close as possible to their natural body weight. In Vinesh's case, her natural body weight is somewhere between 55 to 57. The category that she herself has wanted to participate in is 53, not 50. She has had weight cut issues in the 50 kilo category several times in the past, including the 2016 Olympic qualifiers where she didn't make the weight in this very category. Now, assuming the CAS looks at this favorably in Vinesh's perspective, then UWW will have to consider a change or an amendment to its rules. Several people are speaking about the weight cut on the second day going away entirely, but that doesn't seem like much of a possibility, given that the biggest purpose of that is to check doping, to check unfair advantages that an opponent can have over the other. But the 2 kg leniency that's available for other wrestling events around the world, could that maybe be something that the Olympics can consider? That might be a conversation that the world wrestling ecosystem might want to have. Now, on the other hand, what happens if the Court of Arbitration for Sport doesn't rule in Vinesh's favour? She does have the option of appealing. She'll have to do this in Swiss courts because that's where the CAS is headquartered. Vidushpat Singhania, who's now assisting the IOA, had this to say in an interview to another media house. Technically, you can appeal a decision of CAS in the Swiss courts, but your chances of success are very low because it has to be against public policy. The appeal can only be made on the grounds that a fair process was not followed, which is very unlikely in this case. Hence, one can only assume that the CAS verdict is final. This is a very, very interesting case. It's a case that's blown the world of wrestling wide open. We've had a lot of support coming Vinesh's way, including from her competitors. And we've also had several other people just laying the facts down, saying, rule is a rule, it's being followed by everybody, why breach it now? Whatever happens in this case, whichever way the verdict goes, the world of wrestling is going to change just a little bit. For Vinesh, this could be her only chance to win an Olympic medal because do remember, she has called time on her international wrestling career and has at least as of now taken the decision to not set foot on the mat again.